Alright, now it is time for the checkpoint challenge, and that requires playing as Frappe, because I always have the best luck in checkpoint challenge with Frappe. He seems to handle the best for it, and he doesn't get reversed when we run over ice. Unlike Rufus, Parker, and Jesse, I have not customized Frappe. I think Frappe's default look is the best look for him, frankly. But I will still unlock all of his outfits anyway. So, Checkpoint Challenge works in a rather unique fashion. We have a timer that's constantly counting down, and to add seconds to the timer we have to collect leaves. We collect a certain number of leaves, and we get a time bonus. Such as that. We get more time the lower our timer is, which means the timer is almost always going to be below 30 seconds. Because if we do too well, we'll start only getting 2 seconds whenever we collect enough leaves to get a time bonus. So the game always keeps you at the very edge of failure. Now, aside from not running out of time, there is an overall goal to Checkpoint Challenge. We have to reach the end of the 5th stage, at which point our friends will congratulate us and we will have beaten Checkpoint Challenge mode. Checkpoint Challenge is appropriately named because reaching the end at the end of stage 5 is actually quite difficult. If you cared about completing the game, which I'm not sure why you would because it's an endless runner, but if you cared about completing the game, then you would go to Checkpoint Challenge mode. Because Checkpoint Challenge mode is the mode with an ending. When you reach the end, the mode ends, and you have accomplished the Checkpoint Challenge. To 100% the game, I will eventually need to complete the Checkpoint Challenge with all of the characters, which will be quite challenging. Especially with the penguins. That being said, I do appreciate that Checkpoint Challenge gets its own music. That is nice. In case you are curious, yes, this game does in fact have trophies. So I will know when I 100% it for certain. Now let's use a bit of time to talk about the game. Or rather the developers of the game. This game was developed by EM Studios, and you may have never heard of them, and that's fine, because previous to this they have made games that no one would really care to pay attention to. Their first developed game, as near I can tell, was Smarties Meltdown, a licensed 3D platformer on the PS2 featuring Smarties, the European candy, not the American one. It seems reasonably well made for what it was trying to be, but clearly had a strict budget. And there are some areas where it's obviously not as polished as it should have been in terms of gameplay, bugs, and such. But it's better than you would expect a game based on a chocolate confectionery to be. After that, though, EM Studios went on to work for Blast Games, who, well, they're infamous for making things on the PS2 that people don't like so much. And Blast Studios being a terrible publisher, when EM Studios made games under Blast Studios, their games didn't turn out as well as Smarties Meltdown. They made the Johnny Bravo game on the PS2, which was a surprise, and they also made Lassie on the PS2 based on the film. Lassie is a 3D platformer with some occasional other mechanics mixed in to fit with the narrative, and the Johnny Bravo game is just weird. They also made some other budget games not under the Blast Studios brand. They made a couple of racing games on the Wii that I haven't really gotten a chance to look at, but one of them seems to be trying to capture a 50s aesthetic with its story, art style, and music, which is a little strange to me because I don't think anyone looking for that kind of nostalgia would be playing a racing game on the Wii. But there's some dedication to the art style and atmosphere in that one, even if it's not for anyone in particular. Like, I can't imagine anyone trying to relive their nostalgic 50s youth would also be playing a Wii racing game. That just doesn't line up in my head. But feel free to prove me wrong. And EM Studios is still around today, obviously, because I am playing Shred-It, which was released in 2017. And, seems like they're mostly working on mobile games, which is probably the best place to be. You know, you can get consistent work making licensed mobile games. But all in all, EM Studios has been around a surprisingly long time considering their catalog. Like, up until Shreddit, their most impressive game was Smarty's Meltdown. And as far as I know, Shreddit is their only original IP. They're currently working on a Winx game on the phone store. I don't know what that's about, but I didn't really take any interest in that. Maybe I'll take interest in it when it gets a console port. That sounds unlikely, but you know, Shreddit got a console port, so you never know. EM Studios also seems to be a really small development studio if the credits in Shreddit are anything to go by. So that probably contributed to them lasting so long. I did check, and it seems to be the same EM Studios, by the way. Seems the people who made Shreddit are exactly the same people that made Smarty's Meltdown. I think it's a shame that Smarty's Meltdown is exclusive to Europe, because the only thing we got over here is M&M's Adventure, which is shockingly similar to Smarty's Meltdown, has a very similar premise, in that you're going through a chocolate manufacturing factory bit by bit and freeing the M&Ms, or Smarties in the case of Smarty's Meltdown, and they're both 3D platformers. But M&M's Adventure is unquestionably worse. Very poorly designed. While Smarty's Meltdown put a surprising amount of care into recreating the factory and the way Smarties are actually made, M&M's Adventure is just kind of a mess, with the obstacles thrown all over the place. So it just doesn't compare, in spite of them having a very, very similar premise. Again, a shockingly similar premise. Then again, I guess M&M's Adventure has actual boss battles, where Smarty's Meltdown does not. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. Anyway, we're nearing the end of the checkpoint challenge. So I hope you enjoyed your time with Frappe and me talking about the history of this developer, EM Studios. It's a bit of an odd history, bit of an odd developer. Certainly wouldn't have expected them to make something like Shreddit. But looking at their previous works, it's obvious they always cared about game design. They just weren't always working for the best publisher. And I wiped out right at the end, but that's okay, we still made it.